This is a topic that often goes unexamined because it's in some ways it's a hidden problem. This vulnerable populations phenomenon is a much more profound challenge to address, and yet difficult to get your arms around precisely because it's so huge.
So there are lots of different ways in which someone can be vulnerable, and it doesn't come down to just having low income, although that of course certainly contributes.
This is a vulnerability, again, that cuts across all economic boundaries, all racial and ethnic boundaries, and there isn't a family in Arizona, in America, who has not been touched.
I think that education is an equalizer. However, I think on the front end is helping vulnerable populations to overcome some of those socioeconomic barriers.
Living on the edge, as it were, or scraping by, or having trouble making ends meet, poses a lot of cognitive challenges. If you're constantly stressed because you're not sure if you're going to have enough money at the end of the month or even halfway through the month to make your rent payment, for example. Or
do I have to find a place to stay? Or do I need to find ways to feed my family? Those are choices that, unfortunately, sometimes overshadow attending class.
The other thing is there are certain segments of the population, whether it's older veterans, whether it's single-parent families with kids who live in particular areas, whether it's some who live in a fairly affluent city like Phoenix, but lack adequate transportation, I should say, to get to where the kind of job is that'll pay them a decent wage.
And on the back end is making sure that our businesses and our communities are aligned to help those who are on the educational path to find the right type of career or job that fits the needs of the community that they're living in.
Social safety netting programs, of food stamps, of welfare programs, as those programs continue to dissolve or erode, it increases these feelings of anxiety, depression, and stress.
This kind of stress makes it very difficult for people to access information and to make good decisions, even if they know about things. And so that, coupled with really heavy fragmentation of service provision, can pose a really significant barrier.
We think that recognizing that definition of vulnerability is important because if you really want to understand how much of the population is at risk for these types of disasters, you can't focus only on those people who are in distress today. You have to think about those people who could be in distress tomorrow.
I think the first level is awareness, making individuals aware that these issues exist, that these individuals are here in our communities, that there is areas for improvement.
If you wait until somebody's in distress, it ends up being significantly more expensive, both in social terms and in financial terms, to address those problems than if you reduce the vulnerability before people find themselves in distress.
But I think we need to expand access to say what barriers are preventing individuals from coming to our colleges and our universities.
And so what this report does, which I think is a novel approach to the question of vulnerability, is to try and delineate the sources of vulnerability for people in Arizona, to understand exactly what are the risks faced by our neighbors in our communities and our neighbors in this state. With that greater understanding, I think we're in a stronger position to address those sources of vulnerability and ultimately increase the resilience of our state.